Ex abandoned our kids, blew child support, now she's losing it all after I got full custody. I'm 38 years old, and I've been divorced for about a year now. My ex-wife, who's 37, and I have 2 kids. They're 10 and 7. I have partial custody of them, meaning they spend half of the month with me. However, I still send child support to her for the time they're with her. My income is higher than hers, so I'm also paying alimony on top of the child support. Our divorce wasn't easy. It wasn't just a simple split. We fought a lot in the last few years of our marriage, and she changed as a person. She made it clear during our last argument that she regretted marrying me, so I packed up and filed for divorce. She didn't try to reach out after that, and here we are, a year later. About 6 months after the divorce, I found out she started seeing someone else. A mutual friend told me about it. I was upset that she moved on so quickly, but I didn't have any say in it, so I let it go. We didn't talk about it. We only spoke about the kids, nothing else. I didn't want to make things harder than they already were. It stung a little, but I could accept it as long as she was a good mother to our kids. But recently, she did something that made me think she doesn't even deserve to be around them. About 10 days ago, I was away for work and would be back in 3 days. Technically, she was supposed to drop the kids off at my house on the second day, but I called her and asked if she could look after them a little longer until I got back. She agreed, and I have the texts to prove it. So, I went on my trip without worrying about it. On the second night of my trip, I got a call from my son. He said they were waiting outside my house because their mom had dropped them off, but I wasn't there. They'd been ringing the doorbell for about 15 minutes, and nobody answered. It was freezing outside, so I told them to go to a neighbor's house until I figured it out. But, of course, my neighbors were also out of town, and most of the houses on my street are still empty. It was a new neighborhood, and only the house across from mine had an elderly couple living there, but they weren't home either. I was starting to panic. I told my son to hang on a second while I called their mom. I asked her to come back and get them since they were out in the cold, but instead of apologizing and coming to pick them up, she told me that it was my turn with the kids, and she wasn't coming back. I couldn't believe it. I tried pleading with her, asking her to think about the kids and how they were sitting outside in the snow. She hung up on me. I sent a message, asking her to at least take them home, but she responded by telling me she was late for a date with her boyfriend to celebrate 8 months together. By this time, over 20 minutes had passed, and the kids had been outside for almost 35 minutes. I had no choice but to call Child Protective Services. They arrived quickly, and within minutes, they took the kids to my parents' house, which is a bit out of town. My kids are too young to find their way there alone. My parents were the only ones I trusted to take care of them in that situation. My ex's family is no longer around, and I didn't know who else to turn to. I also filed a report against her for neglecting our kids and putting them in harm's way. When the authorities found them, they were sitting on the front steps, wrapped in my younger son's blanket to stay warm. I felt sick to my stomach when I heard what had happened, but I felt better knowing the kids were safe at my parents' house. Within hours, they arrested her for neglect, and I felt a sense of vindication. At least my kids were okay, and she was going to have to face the consequences. When I got back, I already contacted a lawyer, and we were going to file for full custody. That would mean I wouldn't have to send her any more child support. I wasn't going to let her get away with what she did. She and I didn't speak for a few days, but I found out that she had only been charged with a misdemeanor. I didn't see her until I returned home from my trip. I went to see the kids right away. We sat down, and I talked to them about what had happened. I apologized for not being there when they needed me, but I promised them it would never happen again. I told them I was going to fight for full custody, and they'd be with me from now on. My son looked relieved, too relieved, and happy about it. I started to feel uneasy. I always thought my ex-wife was a good mom. Sure, she wasn't perfect, but I never thought she'd neglect the kids like that. I never had any reason to believe things weren't going well at her place. But when I asked my son why he seemed so happy to not have to live with his mom, he hesitated. After a moment, he admitted that his mom had told him not to talk to me about it. I didn't like what I was hearing, so I pressed him for more. Eventually, he told me that he and his brother had been struggling at their mom's place. She'd become very strict with them. They couldn't have any candy or junk food while they were there, and they had to eat the same bland meals every day. The kids called it sick food, not because it was cool, but because that's what I fed them when they weren't feeling well. It was just plain porridge or some type of oats, day after day for lunch and dinner. They'd only get something different on weekends, but even then, it was just toast with some dip. Their mom said it was all for their health, but I didn't see how forcing them to go without vegetables, meat, or anything remotely nutritious for half the month would make them healthier. And she also banned them from having candy or snacks. I get it, too much of that stuff isn't good, but some here and there isn't going to kill them. In fact, it's probably better for them, so they don't develop weird food issues as they grow up. They also told me that when they were at her place, they weren't allowed to have any friends over, no sleepovers, and they had to go straight to school and back. All the fun stuff was saved for when they were with me. And when she took them shopping, she wouldn't let them get anything they wanted, no toys, books, clothes, or even something like chicken nuggets. She only bought what she needed, and the kids had to stand quietly while she did. If they said anything, she'd yell at them. The worst part was, she told them not to talk to me about any of this. So, for all this time, they kept it to themselves. I didn't get it. I needed to know why she was treating them like this, so I called her up to confront her. At first, she started yelling at me for calling the cops on her, but I ignored that. I asked her why she was doing all this to our kids. They were complaining about not having enough to eat, not having things to play with, not having clothes to wear, and I was paying her enough in child support to provide all those things. So, I asked her what was really going on. She told me she was between jobs and couldn't afford to buy things for the kids. That didn't add up, though. I pay her alimony too, and with that plus the child support, she has enough to live comfortably and still take care of the kids. I argued with her for a bit, and finally, she snapped. She told me it wasn't any of my business what she did with her money and hung up. That really pissed me off. This wasn't her money, it was money I was sending for the kids. It was supposed to be spent on them, not her. I could tell she was lying. So, my lawyer and I decided to move forward with filing for full custody, and I'd also sue her for child neglect and abuse. I was done. About a week and a half later, she called me up, but this time, she was crying. She hadn't tried to contact me in the meantime, and I knew she was only calling because she realized she was about to lose custody of the kids. I had a feeling she didn't want them back for any reason other than the child support that came with them. I told her she had created this mess herself and I couldn't trust her anymore with the kids. She tried to act like it was no big deal, saying she just wanted to mess with me a little, but I wasn't buying it. She said she couldn't survive without the child support, that she was in between jobs, and that's when I knew for sure she wanted custody just for the money, not for the kids. I could feel my disgust building up. I was about to hang up when I heard her friend, who was an attorney, yell at her to forget about the child support and focus on the lawsuit instead. My ex switched gears and started complaining about the lawsuit, saying I was piling more onto her already heavy plate. She was being prosecuted for neglect, the custody battle was coming up, and now I was suing her too. She told me it wasn't fair and accused me of doing this to hurt her because she had moved on and I hadn't. I couldn't help but laugh at how delusional she was, and then I hung up. I didn't talk to her again after that. I focused on my work and the kids. I knew they weren't going back to live with her, and I wasn't paying her any more child support. I started looking for a babysitter for when I had to work and the kids needed someone to watch them. Luckily, my mom has been living with me, so she's been taking care of them while I'm gone. Yesterday, I got a call from my mom while I was at work. She said my ex was at the door and refusing to leave without speaking to me. I couldn't just leave work in the middle of the day, so I asked her to put my ex on the phone. I told her if she didn't stop with her crazy behavior, I'd be forced to file for a restraining order. I told her she needed to stop all this nonsense. But instead of backing down, she started whining about how I was ruining her life. She said I needed to have some compassion and take back the lawsuit because it was all too much for her to handle, the charges, the custody case, and the lawsuit. I told her I was going to be taking breaks from work for the court cases, but as long as my job didn't suffer too much, it was fine with my boss. I wasn't backing down. My ex-wife told me she couldn't afford to pay for a lawyer or attend the meetings because she's between jobs. I told her it wasn't my problem anymore, just like she said when she dropped the kids off at my place. I admit, I said that out of spite, but I also felt like she deserved it. Since the divorce, she had treated me and the kids poorly, and I couldn't just let it slide anymore. She gets monthly alimony and child support from me, yet she still deprived the kids of a good home and kept them from talking to me about it. I thought suing her for neglect and going after full custody was the right thing to do. She's been selfish, dishonest, and a failure as a mother. Me being rude to her should have been the least of her concerns. But she just started crying on the phone, saying I was horrible for suing her. She said losing custody was bad enough, but now I was making it worse. She didn't think it was fair, and I felt guilty at first, even though I told her there was nothing to be done now. But I knew I had to stick to my decision to protect my kids. Update 1. 2 days later, after posting here, I've come to the conclusion that I don't need to feel guilty. Thanks to your comments and my parents' support, I realize now that the money I was sending her for the kids was being spent on herself, not them. I don't follow her on social media, and I'm not in touch with our mutual friends much anymore, but after talking to my parents and some friends, I started to get an idea of what was going on. My kids told me she was home most days but out for hours on weekends, leaving them with the neighbors. Sometimes she'd leave them with relatives, only to come back in the morning. I realized they'd been keeping things from me, likely because she told them not to. So, I decided to snoop a little. I checked her social media through a friend's account, and what I saw shocked me. She was posting pictures of herself partying at clubs, going on beach trips, and staying at expensive hotels with her boyfriend. It looked like the life of a social media influencer, completely opposite from what she'd been telling me. I felt lied to. My friends hadn't mentioned anything because they didn't think it was their place, but now I understood everything. She wasn't struggling, she was just spending the money I sent her for the kids on herself. She was treating our kids horribly just to save money. I don't feel guilty anymore. She's a horrible person, and she deserves the mess she's in. Update 2. Thank you again for all the support and comments. Things have moved forward since then. My ex gave up on the custody battle quickly and said she was willing to terminate her parental rights. She couldn't afford to pay for all her lawyer fees, so the kids are now fully in my custody, and I'm finally able to relax a little. As for the lawsuit, it's going in my favor so far. Today, her boyfriend called me. He thought he could make me feel sorry for them, but all it did was make me more upset. He said my ex was struggling to support herself, the kids, and him. I asked him if partying every other day and spending tons of money on vacations was part of struggling, and he couldn't answer. He then told me she'd been paying for his tuition with her savings. That was the last straw. I realized where all the money I'd been sending her was going. It all added up now, she wasn't supporting the kids like she should have been. I hung up and blocked him. She's going to pay for all of this in court. Update 3. It's been a while since I updated. Thanks for all the concern. I'm doing a lot better, and so are the kids. They seem happy living with me, and they hardly ever talk about their mother anymore. She lost the case, and now she owes me a lot of money. She can't keep blowing her money on clubs and vacations anymore. It's ridiculous that a woman in her late 30s with 2 kids was doing that, but I have nothing to do with her anymore. Thanks again for all the love and support.